So now we're going to talk about polynomials in multiplication. I got two examples I'm going to work today. So this one here is a monomial times a trinomial. And in order to multiply this one here, I always ask myself, inside the parentheses, can I clean it up? And in this case here, I don't have any like terms to combine. And the reason why I know I'm doing that is because each term in here is separated by a plus or a minus. And that rule states that the only thing you can add or subtract together has to be like terms. So the next thing is I'm going to look outside this parentheses. And what I see is I have this negative 3x. That means I'm going to take this negative 3x and I'm going to multiply it to everything inside. So I'm going to write this extra step. Some of you may not want to. That's okay. But I'm going to write this extra step and I'm going to separate it by plus signs. And since there's 3 terms in the parentheses, I know I'm going to have 3 multiplications out here. So I got negative 3x times that x squared, negative 3x times that negative 4x, negative 3x times that positive 1. So what I've done is I've distributed the negative 3x to everything in the parentheses. And then this next step, I'm going to clean it up. I have negative 3x times a positive x squared. The exponential rules state that if you take a like base and multiply them together, you add the powers. My like base is x. I have a power of 1 on this x and a power of 2 on this x. So I'm going to go ahead and say negative 3 times that positive 1, which is a negative 3. And then I have x to the first power times x to the second. That means I add the powers. I have this negative 3x times a negative 4x, and this is positive here, so negative times negative is positive. 3 times 4 is 12. And I have x to the first times x to the first, so I add the powers because they're like bases. I have negative 3x times a positive 1. Negative times positive is negative. 3x times 1 is just 3x. So now let's clean it up. I have negative 3x, 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 12x, 1 plus 1 is 2, minus 3x. And it is written in descending order. So if I was to state the leading coefficient and the leading degree is 3, and the leading coefficient is negative 3. This is written in the correct notation, and that is my final answer. So now let's work on this other example of multiplication. This multiplication is a binomial times a binomial, right? 2 terms times 2 terms. So we're going to do the distributive rule as well here. And you can also call it the full method, guys. We talk about this when we factor. We're going to take our first terms and multiply it to our last terms. So I have my first times my first, which is 2x times x. And then I'm going to have my outers, right? The 2 outer terms. So I'm going to put my plus here. And I'm going to have 2x times 4. And then I'm going to put a plus here. Do 2 more sets. I'm going to do my inners. So I have negative 9 times x. And now let's do our last. So I'm going to say plus 2 more. My last is negative 9 times positive 4. Okay, so let's clean this up. I have 2x times x, and again, when you multiply like bases, we add the powers. My like base on this one is x. I have x to the first times x to the first gives me 2x squared. Then I have positive 2x times positive 4, which is positive 8x. I have a negative 9 times positive x is negative 9x. I have a negative 9 times positive 4 is a negative 36. So before I say it's my final answer, I look to see if I have any like terms to combine together because we got adding and subtraction going on here. I have x squared, no other x squared, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this one down. But I do have x to the first and x to the first, so these two can be put together. So I have $8 in the bank, but I spent $9. That leaves me in the hole $1. But your final answer, you would not put a 1 here. That would not be in simplest format because we know that negative 1 times x is just negative x. So it's important, guys, that when you write it in your final answer, it's just negative x. And then my constant term is 36, and it's a negative 36. This is my final answer. This is a trinomial because it has 3 terms. And this is a trinomial that has 3 terms. This leading coefficient here is the number on the leading variable, which is 2. And then the leading degree here is the leading power, which is 2.